Whenever we're recording. Okay, if I could have everybody's attention, please. Good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Woodbury County Zoning Commission. Today's date is July 25th, 2022, and the time is 6:00 p.m. Tonight's meeting will be audio taped and minutes will be prepared. In respect to all parties who ask those questions on cell phones or set devices, those in attendance are asked to legibly complete the attendance sheet at the table. Present there.
Yes.
Okay. I would like to take a moment to review the procedures that the commission will follow tonight. First, the commission will handle the normal housekeeping agenda items. Then for each application on the agenda, I will open a public hearing on the item. The planning and zoning staff will then present the staff report, including the staff recommendation. Any letters or other communications prior to the hearing will be entered into the record. The applicant will then have the opportunity to present his case and respond to the staff report. Next, we will have comments from the public. If you would like to speak either in support of or against the application, let's come to the microphone. Please first state your name and address for the record. All interested parties shall be heard, but repetitious comments should be avoided. Repetitious or irrelevant comments will not be by the chair. I ask that you remain respectful and courteous with your comments at all times. After all public comments have been heard, the staff and applicant may make a closing statement. The hearing shall then be closed by motion. Thereafter, no further comments from the staff or applicant may be heard unless asked for permission. The commission shall then deliberate the case and may ask questions of the applicant, the staff, or any other party offering testimony. However, such questions do not reopen the hearing for additional testimony unless so requested or approved by the commission. The commission will then formulate and vote on a motion. Typically, grant or deny the requested application. Any commission member who has an ex parte application to this meeting should do so prior to the beginning of deliberation of the respective agenda item. Okay, so roll call. Call to order. Okay, we did that roll call. Let the record reflect that all commissioners are present tonight.
We do have one on the.
And we do have an individual on the phone. Can you identify yourself, please?
Mark Livermore.
Okay, thank you, Mark. The next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from June 27th, 2022. Do we have any corrections or any comments on that? Not. Entertain a motion. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the public hearing for the Evergreens Edition minor subdivision proposal. Dan, you want to read that information into the record, please?
Yes, the Window Real Estate LLC has filed a 2-lot minor subdivision on property identified as parcel number 884726200004. The purpose is to establish 2 lots. The first lot will include 13.12 total acres. The second lot will include 11.79 total acres. The proposal has been properly noticed in the city journalistic section on July 9, 2022. The neighbors within 1,000 feet have been duly notified via July 9, 2022 about tonight's meeting, zoning commission public hearing on July 25th, 2022. The appropriate stakeholders, including government agencies, utilities, and organizations, have been notified and been requested to comment. No objections were received from the stakeholders. The Woodbury County engineer found the proposal in compliance with Iowa code closure requirements. We found that lots of adequate access, and the county engineer recommends a pavement agreement to be included for consistency as the subdivision across the street, acres and acres to the west, is subject to a pavement agreement. Extraterritorial review as required by Iowa Code 354.9 is not required as this property is further than the property is not located in a floodplain. There are no wells or septics on the lots. Based on the information received and requirements set forth in the zoning and subdivision ordinance, the proposal meets appropriate criteria for approval. The staff does recommend approval of this proposal with the condition as county engineer Nara stated, the 24 of 64 pavement agreement be in place. After talking to the county, so we put the or in there. County engineer Nara is reviewing the policy right now. So basically, kind of the request is to recommend based on what DAR comes up with, based on the two agreements. The county has historically had 60/40 in place for a number of years, and years ago, the board adopted the 80/20, and is reviewing the fact that the other subdivision across the street had the 60/40. And so he's communicating with our proposal supervisors to distinguish on which one to adopt. So, the recommendation would be to ours assessment on payment appropriate for this matter. One more thing to point out for public notification, we did not receive any comments about this proposal up until this afternoon at 4 o'clock hour. And the only comment is from property owner across the street, Jim Coward. He says he has no objections to the proposal. He just simply had some questions about what this was about in terms of being notified 1,000 feet, but no objections from Mr. Jim Coward, who is also listed as one of the property owners of 1,000. So with that said, again, staff recommends approval on the condition that a pavement agreement subject to Mark Nara's recommendation.
Do you have anybody here that represents? Okay, would you like to speak to us about this proposal, or are you?
Thank you. My name is Sandra Rendell. We sold the farm. Which is better than buying a farm, right? Sold the farm. And we kept the property, kept that top 9 acres, because my husband grew up there. Let it all go. But what we realized was in that rules, and you can buy it once, but it becomes the invest. Okay, so the bottom part is so, and it's the middle section is remnant prairie. It is 1% of all prairies left. It is actually quite rare. And the Iowa Natural Heritage Fund, we're giving it to you. We're giving you that, please, the rest of this. Just put it in 10. It's one of the largest pieces of prairie we received as a gift. And we feel very honored to be able to give that to the state of Iowa. It will be, it's very exciting because in comes some very rare species in that prairie, in that land. And they're going to harvest the seeds and reconstitute prairie in other places in western Iowa. So that's why we're here. And I know that our good neighbor, Mr. Reaper, has a question. So it's not for us to answer you. But that's why we are.
That side over the grass is, that's the part that's going in. That's cool.
Yes, the 13 acres at the top is planted in corn, and this part, mostly for the $1 million field.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Someone else?
Yes.
No questions? Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the public? Okay. Okay, do we have anything from the commissioners? If not, we go into closed session. Okay, someone want to make a motion? Thank you. Motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye. Okay, we're now in closed session. Any further discussion, commissioners, on this application? No questions, no comments, no concerns? Okay. We're ready to make a motion.
I'll make a motion. Recommend acceptance and approval of the Evergreens Edition final plat to the Board of Supervisors with the condition the pavement agreement be signed with Woodbury County as determined by the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second.
I'll second that.
this discussion? None, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, it's done. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
I will be calling.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, the next item we have on the agenda is a public hearing zoning ordinance map amendment, a rezone from AP to AE proposal. Mark A. Livermore and Michelle M. Livermore. Do you want to read the information of that proposal into the record, please, Dan?
Yes, Mark A. Livermore and Michelle M. Livermore have filed an application for a zoning ordinance map amendment rezone on the property identified. It's an unassigned portion 894430300008 from the agricultural preservation to the agricultural estate zoning district for the purpose of completing a boundary adjustment to add 2.89 acres to their abutting property identified as parcel number 894430300004, which is already in the agricultural estates zoning district. The two parcels must be in the same zoning district before the Woodbury County assessor can combine the two parcels into one. The proposal has been properly noticed in the Sioux City Journal's legal section on July 9, 2022. The neighbors within 1,000 feet have been duly notified via July 9, 2022 letter about tonight's July 25th, 2022 zoning commission public hearing have been requested to comment. As of the printing of this packet, no comments or inquiries have been received about the proposal, including as of tonight. Appropriate stakeholders, including government agencies, utilities, and organizations have been notified and have been requested to comment. No objections were received from stakeholders based on the information received and requirements set forth in the zoning and subdivision ordinance. The proposal meets the appropriate criteria for approval. It is the recommendation of staff to approve the zoning ordinance map amendment rezone to the agricultural estates zoning district. With that said, that's all I have.
Okay, Mark, are you still on the phone? Mark?
Yes.
Okay, do you have anything you want to add to the public record concerning your
No,
application?
all I'm gonna do, like I said, to this property is, I'm just gonna store my camper on it, and it borders mine and my daughter's land and my dad's land. There's no access to this land other than through our area. So that's about all I really have to say.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have any questions or comments? Need to go into closed session on this one?
I will motion to
Closed session? Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Okay. Anybody have any comments or questions at this point? Concerns? No? I can entertain a motion.
I will make a motion on this one. Seems pretty straightforward to me.
Yes.
And my motion would be there it is. To recommend acceptance and approval of the zoning ordinance map amendment from the agricultural preservation to agricultural estates. To the board of supervisors.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the table. We have a second. Okay, we have a fight over second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, you have it. It goes to the supervisors.
And just for the record, the Board of Supervisors will see this up to 3 public hearings, August 2nd, 4:45 PM, August 9th, 4:45 PM, and August 16th, 4:45 PM.
Mark? You're good to go?
Yes.
Okay, did
All
you
right,
get
thank you.
Okay, you got all that information?
Yes, I do.
Okay, perfect. Let us know if you have any questions.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item we have on the agenda is information discussion, draft FEMA special flood hazard area maps. Dan, what do you got for us?
Yeah, basically, add. But basically FEMA is hit the restart button from where we were a year or so ago when it came to the adoption of the draft floodplain maps. What happened was they had an issue on printing the data on the firm, and the firm had already went out on the public notice portion, and they had to withdraw it, correct it, and go back through the cycle. The data on the maps have not changed from when they've been reported out to many stakeholders of the county before. So basically they're on kind of they're on these multi 30-day cycles basically to get the county to talk about them, and then the federal will come in and they'll put something in the Federal Register. They'll put something in the local papers that it's basically at the federal level for challenging if anybody has any respective concerns. And what really kind of happens is we'll go through this kind of multi-cycle period, like we have a 90-day period, a 30-day period leading up to January or so of 2024. And that's when they anticipate to adopt the new flood maps that become effective, where basically all the decisions will be based off the new maps versus the old maps. And folks still are able to do the normal things if they have their property and they're in the floodplain and they feel the ground is higher, they can still hire a surveyor, go through the LOMA process to challenge the maps. And then what happens is FEMA will review our existing LOMAs and everything in terms of considering them. Some may qualify, some may not qualify for the new maps, but what the property owners will end up being able to do if they really feel a problem with the maps is they'll be able to apply for those LOMAs even up to when they adopt those maps, and then they could end up being considered to go along with the adoption. So that remains the landowner's ability, I guess, to challenge that from, of course, the surveyor perspective. But I just wanted to brief everybody and just kind of say something basically about that email that came out. I remember that day it came out, it was kind of late in the day, and I had an idea that they would probably launch it in July at least. And so that's kind of how the federal works basically.
Okay.
So
What is the public comment section period?
there's the FEMA, we're kind of on a 30-day period right now, and then they will kick off a Federal Register posting, and they'll go into the local papers, and that'll be kind of the idea, hopefully, where public will see that in a sense. And so I don't have the definite dates for you at this point in time, but when we do, we'll definitely post it out. But it's imperative for sure that the landowners are aware. I think the good part where we're at now is there's no changes. It's the same landscape that we were at before. They did not come in and say, oops, you got to calculate entire areas. That's the good news.
That's the good news. Yeah, there wasn't a mistake as far as.
Across data would
History.
probably cost us a few more years.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
So,
Good. Okay, well, thank you for that update. We have no public, so I'm assuming we don't have to worry about that. So commissioners' comments or inquiries at this point in time.
Just a couple things. Your comment, I wasn't at the last meeting, your comment about the shed homes, is that something?
I've just been seeing them more, and I was wondering more about marketability. And,
I didn't know if there was something going on.
oh, no. I've just been seeing quite a few. And just wondered about how many we've had. And I guess I could look at the building permits.
And technically, to answer that, building permits have to meet the minimum dimension of at least 23 by 23. And so with the county not having building codes per se, those type of homes would be issued under the building permit category for a house or dwelling. So
Would there be a section on there that I would know that it wasn't?
there's really
A shelf.
not so much that they have to meet. They just have, the key point is to meet the minimum.
It's basically like a home permit application. I mean, I've been in a couple of different ones out there. One can't tell from a home when you're in it, other than the outside. So I didn't know if there was something going on with that was.
Not that I know of, I just, there's a few more of them in this county.
Wanted one, my wife wouldn't let me. Accepting one.
The other thing I guess I was gonna bring up is this. A lot of calls, questions, and comments. One thing I guess I'd like to clarify or verify is if the turbine goes up and the setback is whatever it is, 1,000 feet, 50 feet, whatever it ends up at, doesn't matter. The reverse setback then for building a home near that turbine is going to be that same distance. So I guess that's part of a concern I have, you know, let's go to 2,500. Well, all of a sudden now the turbine goes up on the, I don't know how close it can be to the road, but on the neighboring property, I might have 300 acres of ground and I can't build a home on it because I have a 2,500. So I've just been cautioning, even once it comes. Right, the reverse setback will work, am I correct? 2,500 feet to a home, so if the turbine's up, they can't build a home within 25 feet of that turbine. Is that the?
That's a good point, and I have to read the text a little bit more closely.
But that's what, I'm correct in that statement.
That is a very reasonable concern, and I'm gonna be reading that text.
So I get, and I do know, you know, there, you could maybe go through a variance or there's certain things, but I guess I'm not saying don't go to 2,500. I'm not saying to go to it. I'm just trying to bring up everything so people are aware of what they're asking for. You know, if it was a mile and that turbine goes up on this corner, now all of a sudden a section of ground can't have a home.
Couple sections.
Well, I mean, if I own, yeah, you're right. You could encompass 4 sections with 1 turbine. No homes anymore. So it could get ugly fast for a lot of people, and there's a taking there that who compensates for that. So that's all I was bringing up because I've talked to people and I've tried to explain what I can to them. Not for turbines, I'm not any way talking one way or the other. I'm just trying to bring up the facts that may happen if they choose to go down the path.
That is a very good point. I want to know that if I was sitting.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you don't want one near you. A lot of people don't. They want that setback greater. Well, all of a sudden now they may own a farm somewhere else that maybe they didn't want to develop, put some homes on. Oh, no, you can't put any homes on that because there's a turbine.
There'd be a lot of places in Woodbury County you couldn't put a turbine, obviously, because of how many small homes, I mean, small acreages of farms.
What do you think would be the best?
I can't argue. I mean, I don't know, because I can't, it's just like with hog buildings, whatever else it may be, people wanted, I want a mile. Well, then all of a sudden, now that mile takes when you're right, no homes on a section, 4 sections of ground. That's the part
What do you think is the best compromise?
I can't answer that. I guess you look towards what other counties have done, but if you're close to it, 2 miles might not be enough. You know what I'm saying? I'm not arguing one way or the other for more or less setbacks. I'm just.
I got a text about it as well. Current 1250.
1250 is what it's currently at.
And the engineer or the board
He
is
wants
for
2,500, or he would prefer 2,500. The point I brought up before, and I brought up again, is that setback maybe should be based on property line, not on residence. So
That was brought up
if it's
too.
1,250 feet from my property line where it can be put up, I don't ever lose any rights. Because I can always put a home up on my property.
Yeah.
The landowner that's selling the right to the turbine gives up rights on his
They're
ground.
right.
But you'll never, if it's from a property line, you'll never incur a negative impact for property development or use of their property because you're always outside of that line. So maybe that's a better way to look at it, because then if they got a big chunk of ground and they can put 5 turbines in there, they're still not going to impact anybody else around there. I know it limits Mid-America's issue because they can't find chunks of ground maybe where they can do that as easy, but they do have ground that they can do that. So that's my comment, is from the property line maybe should be the goal more than a residence.
So in your research, have you found things with other counties where they use the property
But
line?
then you run into issues.
When this was
But yeah,
originally kind of looked at, I know that David was kind of breaking down like Kossuth County and trying to remember what some of the other counties were, but he did kind of have a list of different counties that they put together. And originally, the county engineer, to my understanding, approached our office and there was concerns of the road aspect of this type of development was going to happen. He wanted measures in there that would protect the road system. So that was kind of generally where the idea of this started, was to have the ordinance from that home rule aspect of having to go to the supervisors originally. But I don't know off the top of my head what all those counties, but I think some of them would have been up by the lakes, Kossuth, et cetera. We've been to conferences before, and I'm trying to think if Lynn County could have been in there. That was one of those that we discovered when there, apparently, that they wouldn't have thought. And same thing with me, I didn't think Woodbury had wind to the extent that some of these other respective counties have. And yeah, I don't know entirely what those lists were, but County Engineer Nara did have a couple ordinances that he presented to David.
Do you know what the current distance from the road setback is?
From the tower aspect?
Yeah.
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to pull the ordinance.
Because like Jeff's comment too, if there's a way to write it where it's, the reverse setback is the same as the setback. Because if you're gonna build a home and you know there's a tower there, you can't complain because you got a tower next to your home. So more of it is a safety issue if it's far enough away that they don't have to worry about anything there, but then you get, but that's a good.
This is available on the county website off of the ordinances section, but if I go up to page 10, is where it addresses some of the setbacks. And as I did a quick read just now, it seems to me that some of those items may possibly could be reasonably touched on. Because we get right here, and there's your kind of general language about the siting with your grid there.
110% total height is the property lines.
Typical height. Do you know what that is?
The blades are, 110
I think it is the
above.
total height of the tower and its axis. So 600 feet from the road or 110% of the total height is the road right of way setback.
I don't like that the setbacks are impacting other people. You're gonna put a
Other
turban
property,
on.
people's rights, basically.
Because there is nothing in there currently for a reverse setback, so it's not addressed. But I assume that could be done through a board of adjustment, a variance possibly. That's kind of a tricky situation.
The tricky situation is that this ordinance takes over for the zoning ordinance. In fact, there's some.
So it'd have to be through the supervisors there.
The supervisors would control the approval through the CWIX permit. Then they would control any variance action.
Mhm.
Like,
They can do anything, basically.
yeah.
They can set the standard. This is just guidelines,
So
so.
technically, if they follow this by the rule and that goes to 2,500 feet, they could look at every residence is going to be 2,500 foot from a tower that's existing too.
Well,
Supervisors technically.
there's, all those things are definitely possibilities. I understand, of course, last Tuesday night at the board meeting, some concerned citizens did show up and mention some concerns about the setback. Then when the board agenda came out on Friday for tomorrow's meeting, they did have a line in there about possibly considering 2,500 foot setback to repeal basically the occupied residence setback in that table. Basically.
And I don't know if anybody's seen the maps, but when they go from 1,250 to 2,500, there's a lot area in the county.
Well, Rocky's out there with his camera.
So then all of a sudden you eliminated that reverse setback issue because it didn't put any out. So, I mean, but there is an area in the county that could still have, or some people could still be negatively impacted.
Next week's August.
Updated thing wasn't on there last.
That just goes on.
I didn't have it put on the website yet.
Oh. Interesting.
Yeah, we don't know. It's like in your email, you could find it.
It was on the agenda at least at some point.
Okay, okay, for discussion, if nothing else, okay, gotcha. So the supervisors have it on their agenda for tomorrow's meeting. Outside continuation, so if you want more information, be present. Just FYI. Is there anything else anybody wants to comment or any issues out there we need to know about? Keep us up to date, keep us informed, so we're not
Are we on commissioner?
blindsided. Yeah, comment or inquiry. Yes, you want me to move up to staff update?
I'm just checking where we're at.
Yes, item number 7.
Those are bad news.
It's quiet now, so you can go to number 8.
I have a board of supervisor information item tomorrow night, and basically what it is looking at the county fee schedule. Somebody comes in for a variance, a conditional use permit to come before the zoning commission. I've got some concerns that typically what happens is we're designed that the fee can pretty much take, pull out our resources in terms of sending out the mailings, doing the publishing, doing the general work. The goal is that the fee covers that. And so when somebody files let's just say, for example, somebody filed a subdivision tonight and the rezone tonight. You'll notice on our zoning commission packets, when we list how many property owners within 500 feet or 1,000 feet, that rarely goes over, let's say, 20 people or 30 people, 35 people. We're always kind of in I would say an average in there around under 20 property owners, especially when you're in 500 feet. You're not going to have 40 neighbors, very likely, if you're in the unincorporated area. Now, what's happened is costs, of course, are going up across the board, inflation, et cetera. And publishing in the journal and other papers, I don't have a concrete rate what the journal is, but I know some of the other papers kind of do about 50 some cents a line. So it might be 58, might be 57 cents a line. So I've kind of ran some analysis. This is really, really small print, but we kind of across our permits. But let's just say, for example, somebody files $250 to the zoning commission, and let's just say staff is doing maybe 5 hours of work, and let's just throw $25 an hour or something on there to kind of deduct that down, and then we can call it a research fee of $125 out of the 250. And postage rate for first class nowadays is about 60 cents if you're just mailing the letter out. And so we'd run the cost, and let's just say we have 35 people or so for a conditional use. And so I'm getting up to about $248 out of the 250 for that cost there. And so what I'm getting at is I'm going to present to the supervisors, maybe we should have a trigger point on the fee schedule that says if you have about 35 people within the neighborhood and the journal posting or whatever other paper, the mobile record, et cetera, if their fee exceeds $100, then before the issuance of a conditional use or another, that we would pass the cost on so that the taxpayer basically isn't necessarily picking up the bill when things get excessive. And I will point a couple examples now. Towers.
How long has this been?
This 2003 actually. And the argument on a fee schedule in general, I'm talking with the county engineer, is that you want people to come to the county and get a permit, to get a building permit. You don't want your fees so excessive that, oh, I'll just get the permit and go ahead and build. You want them to, make a relationship with the office and the boards and everything to pursue that. So that's kind of a general logic in terms of permitting, to keep fees within a reasonable rate. If you always control them for inflation and you get real excess where a building permit in some places you get up to $800 or $1,000, and sometimes even in the incorporated where they add all these extra calculations on square footages, and you can see permits go quite up in price. And so as kind of a control measure, I'm just kind of presenting an aspect there because I've got a few concerns. Because number one, well, they're all equal. There's no number one concern, but the concerns are when we do, for example, a tower. A tower is a 1 mile. And a few years ago, we had that one down by Sloan. We picked up the town in our mailings, and we had about 662, or I'm thinking, yeah, 662 is the numbers coming to my head that we mailed out. And if you times that by 60 cents, if you were to do first class, but of course we'd be creative and check our other opportunities through bulk rates, through mail house, etc. But if we get on the hook where somebody's going to put one in a, just in the unincorporated, that's going to grab a bunch of dense city, then we could run into, an issue where now this is hurting the budget. I'll give you another example. We have other conditional uses that the board could possibly see at some point: landfills, pipelines, all various other things that are subject to zoning commission review and board of adjustment that would likely have a significant number of folks within the 500 feet of those respective areas. So there's all sorts of different aspects that would place us in a way that, see, if you have adjacent parcels or adjacent properties, you're filing a conditional use regardless of how large your property is. So we treat that in the application process as one permit fee, like we did with the Mid-American campus a few years ago with the borrow pit scenario where they had this parcel, this parcel, this parcel, but we reviewed it as a larger package, and then you're grabbing more of the 500 feet when they do certified abstractor listing. So there's going to be points in time where it's very possible that we could get hundreds of folks. I even recall the Correctionville Tower we had last year. That picked up quite a bit more, and it grabbed Ida County a bit too for some of the mailings there. So that's just something that I want to put out there. The Board of Supervisors does control the fee schedule based on resolution. So it's not mandated that it goes through the commission, because they do control the fees as they control the budget, but our zoning ordinance itself enumerates that authority to the supervisors to simply pass a resolution. So they could decide, again, tomorrow's an information item, they could decide a number of routes that the county could take as it pertains to fees.
Is your goal, for the most part, the fees cover, the permit fees cover the expenses currently, for the most part?
I think it does depend on the situation. I think our department, we've mailed quite a bit on a number of miscellaneous items as well, because when we notice for zoning commission, board of adjustment, we also notice for supervisors. What happens, for example, when we do the rezone for the applicant tonight, there's a publication that goes in notifying that there's 3 public hearings for the board of supervisors. So that's one notice. And then we get that back or get through the board of supervisor meetings, then we got to go back and publish the notice or the ordinance. And so that's an ordinance amendment. So we're publishing another item. Then the ordinance gets put together, and we usually put the publications together with the ordinance file in the recorder's office. So you can incur various expenses, but it can depend. Sometimes we're inside the ballpark, sometimes we're outside of the ballpark. We do have the department budget so far as to the covering the mailings. The goal is to cover the fees, to cover things as much as possible, but we are budgeted in those scenarios as a whole. So the whole goal of county fees typically are to cover as much of the expenses as possible, but with the understanding you can go outside sometimes.
I know when you were out, we talked a little bit about that, that even if there was a surcharge that could be applied at excessive limits, or you could still keep the permit fees down, but they're still going to incur the cost if it's over that.
Well, and the policy as a whole just has to be fair across the board for everybody. So if you have a fair kind of point, and this is something we'll look at further, likely with the county attorney's office, but if you If somebody applies for an application, you just have a set of criteria. This criteria for this application. And so typically, I think, again, our applications would not trigger that. So it's not going to be a huge impact across the board. My simple answer to that is most of our conditional uses are within 500 feet of the property, and you're likely not going to have typically hundreds of people or 30 some people next to those property owners across the board. But our ordinance is designed for bigger projects too, including items that this board and Board of Adjustment are subject to reviewing and looking at that could be bigger projects at different times, and have lots of area and lots of parcels that could, even 500 feet with multiple parcels, could put more folks together versus somebody that just wants a real simple conditional use. Versus when you look at our table of land use, you can kind of see the intensity of various projects and various development projects, how much more of an impact they could have on adjacent property owners versus some that may be very little. So there is that kind of intensity there. And so when you have multiple parcels, multiple people around property owners, there's possibly a chance to look at the intensity of an application, basically, and what it could do to county's bottom line when it comes to finances and money, et cetera.
Right, so basically, historically, all the fees that have been applied for, like say during a year, they'll average out. So for the most part, the most expensive, like applications that you have to do all the mailings for, are helped or subsidized by the smaller ones that don't have as many mailings and as much time involved. And you
That's
just balance it out,
that
basically.
Sounds like though, for the basic one, costs you $248.
Mhm.
You need a hell of a lot of applicants to cover when you need a bigger project.
Right, right, that's what I mean. How many, it depends on how many you have. It varies every year.
So they need to increase the fee schedule by $50 to cover the basic. Once it's over 20 notifications, 25, I mean, then there's a dollar per whatever.
Yeah.
To cover mailing and paper and envelope and stuff like that, whatever.
And the staff time too can fluctuate depending on what it takes.
The
Some really
complexity.
significant research, generating the content that ultimately goes in the packets, et cetera. I'll give you an example on minor subdivision where you have a bit of a, let's see. We kind of fall in the same ballpark really on the minor subdivision because they're $250 as well, like the conditional use, but I'm trying to find us a more expensive one. Let's see, $400 zoning ordinance map amendment. If I ran it based under the same criteria, we're actually ahead based on some of the things, $150 some dollars ahead. So it just kind of, it can depend on what the fee
Balance,
is.
basically balance down, historically has balanced out. But now it's time to look at it again.
Tonight's
Yeah.
7 people and 10 people mailed out.
Yeah, so that would go out basically first class likely, but we do have our mail go into, I believe, to the mail house. The county has their own kind of bulk mailing situation too.
Do you have to keep like a budget for every applicant? Do you keep, I mean, is there like this applicant costs this much, this is profitability, this applicant costs this much, this is a loss? Do you actually do that for every application? Okay,
We don't
I wasn't
so much,
sure.
no.
Okay, I was just curious.
You count the 2 hours that you got, an hour and a
Here?
hour, while you're here on top of.
You're bringing good points right now.
Yeah,
too.
I
right,
mean, it's just, yeah, it's.
right, and answer
Yeah,
the
does that
questions
come out
on
of
the
the commit
telephone.
schedule or does that come out of your?
And even our.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and our mileage.
We're celebrating that.
Brings the margins.
Uh-huh.
That's good.
Yeah. It's much bigger than.
The mailing, yeah,
Right, oh, it's much more than that, yeah, paper, ink,
yeah, definitely kind of looking at the general,
Hasn't increased in 20 years. I wish my property tax had been like that.
yeah, hey. Well, if you want money, tell the supervisors property taxes have to, stay stagnant for 20 years, and then we'll talk about No movement there.
Okay, so that's what I got so far. So,
Okay, great. Thank you very much for the
If you need
update.
a voice of support, I think it sounds very appropriate where you're, I know your official proposal is, but I think it sounds very reasonable and appropriate to do that. To support the taxpayers, but also, I mean, the applicant, I mean, everything's more expensive now. Property values are different now too.
Well, no, I understand, yeah, some way to, you gotta make up, if you've got, especially some of them could just kill you on costs. So, yeah, had some avenue to be able to recoup that.
I don't have the data in front of me, but we did go to the mail house on one of those towers, and I think it was costly in terms of maybe.
But like you said, if you got 600 mailings, you're gonna lose money on that application unless you've got some way to recoup.
The mailings are cheap relative to the labor cost to make it happen. Reach out to the mail house, all these kind of things.
Yeah.
So. That'd be a basic package, that X number of dollars, $250 or $400 get you this, and your service exceeds this many hours, and this much stuff. This is the cost per hour, cost per mailing. And again, not dealership costs, but appropriate cost for those things.
Reasonable. Other counties do that too.
It really depends. A lot of times it is clumped basically by the level of intensity on the application and everything together, because some applications that just aren't as intensive as others. It's fascinating is when you bring that up, but when you are doing a tower, you are likely researching it quite a bit. The research intensity goes up, the bigger the project is.
You could do $700-800 and something like that versus a simple one where you.
Pipeline request across distance, I mean,
And like I made a comment the other day, those projects probably, they're not really concerned if they're gonna pay 250 or 1,000
Well,
I mean, that thing.
per permit, they're gonna do it, the tower, the pipeline, those projects are expensive. Don't really care.
Already paid more expensive.
That is a good
That's the way
point.
the budget does.
That is a good point, and on the tower, Iowa Code 8C actually caps what a local can charge.
Really.
Okay. Are we charging the max?
We're charging the 500 for which is the max, I believe, on modification, and I think it's up to 2,000 on it. So, yeah, they're real careful as it comes to that from the state level.
Thank you.
Good call on it.
Good. Good. Do we have anything else? An adjournment.
Good to adjourn.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Tom, so seconding. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. We are